Hill City. Welcome to the Hill City podcast as we continue to discuss our Life with Jesus series through the book of Mark. And John preached last time from Mark chapter 16, the ending of Mark. It's an unusual ending, but he also went back through and kind of reviewed what the whole gospel of Mark is about and how we find the call to discipleship throughout that book. So John, do you want to summarize your message for everyone?
I would say just going through the book of Mark, we went from the beginning all the way to the end. Maybe not all the points that I wanted to hit, but enough that we could fill the whole time. But just beginning, what really stood out in the beginning of Mark was just Mark 1:1, where Mark is like, hey, let me tell you what this is about. This is about Jesus. He is the King, he's the anointed Messiah, and he's the Son of God.
Yeah.
And he is just being almost like launched into this space where baptism happens. And I said it in this way. It was like a moment of ultimate reality where God peels back like the heavenlies and the Spirit falls on him. Everyone's like, what is going on right now? And then God just shouts out, this is my Son who I am well pleased, whom I love. Like, this is the guy. And so from there, baptism is an explosion into the ministry of Jesus. I didn't talk much about, being tempted and all that stuff, but we went right into the ministry because he got tempted, led in by the Holy Spirit, tempted, and then he just breaks loose what heaven looks like on earth, where people are healed, where the outsiders are brought in, where the social dynamics don't matter as we thought they would matter. And the ones who thought they had all the power, God's like, no, that's not how that works. Yeah. And so all these things are happening in the ministry of Jesus. And it's so beautiful because God is bringing rest for people's souls. And I just love that we are a part of it. We're a part of the stronghold breaking, the calming of people's storms. Not that we always calm storms, but we know that God has the authority and the power to even do that because heavens have been open to all who are willing, who might dare to trust in Jesus. And then we talked about the church, the called out ones. Then we go from baptism, ministry into the call of discipleship. Of course, I would say, of course, if we didn't hit that, then we wouldn't be Hill City, right? So we talked about what Jesus is doing. He's inviting us to follow him, and he calls it a yoke. And we know a yoke as a farming tool, but in that era, a yoke of the rabbi was to be under Jesus, to plow with your rabbi, to learn from him and to take on the way he sees the world, to take on what is enlightened about him. And we as disciples, we are invited to yoke our lives to Jesus. But what that also means is that we have to detach what we have already yoked our lives to. Because no matter what, we're a disciple of someone. I'm not trying to John Mark Homer you, but we are all in spiritual formation. We're in formation of YouTube, formation of our parents, formation of our professors, teachers, mentors. But we are following someone's way of seeing the world. And when Jesus invites us, he's inviting us to see the world as he sees it, which he sees it as an unleashing of the kingdom of God. Ultimate reality behind the realities that we see. And so then from there, he calls us to the cross. Fun, right? It's like, yay, cross. But it's a denial of self. What Jesus is asking us in following him is not like, believe in me. He's asking us like, you got to die. A death must occur. And it's easy to say, but to actually live it, I can feel the weight of it. I'm like, oh man, because it doesn't end with like, okay, now I gave up one thing, a death occurred. It's a constant dying and a constant resurrection that happens in our lives. And the cross, I just ended with like, the cross means that even when we die, even when we deny ourselves, take up the cross, our cross, and then follow Jesus into what he's doing, then all the things that we thought were dead, he resurrects it in his way. Yeah. And I just thought that's just like a beautiful way of looking at the world. that it takes a death, but in our death there will always, in Christ, there is a resurrection.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of fear in giving up what we want.
Mm.
Like I don't want to give him this. I just want to believe the right things. But he has never given us that opportunity. He has never said, just believe the right things and you're good. He said things like, abide in me, follow me, deny yourself, take up the cross, follow me. And then we just ended with the idea of resurrection and that God's eternal reality is real. And what that means is all things are possible. And God is going to do what he's going to do because he's the king.
Yeah.
And he's the Son of God. Yeah. What was something that came out of that? I know that's just like a jumble sometimes, but what were some thoughts that you had on that?
I think one of the main thoughts I had is just that beauty of the cross and resurrection linked together. I think sometimes maybe if you've been in the church for a while under a particular type of teaching, or it's easy to emphasize one over the other, right? But we can, the cross is a call, as Bonhoeffer put it, Jesus' call on us is to come and die. Oof. And the cross is the place where that happens in our lives, that we are ultimately called to die to whatever ideas of a fulfilling life to the full is for us, of our own wisdom and understanding, and instead take up whatever Jesus calls us to. But the reason that's bearable, the reason that works, is because Jesus came to give life to the full, as he says in John. And so because he gives us life to the full, because there is a resurrection that's better and more fulfilling and more us, like more true to who we've been created to be,
that's good,
than anything we could come up with on our own. That's why the yoke of discipleship, that's why the cross is bearable, and why resurrection and belief in it is so important, which we touched on for Easter. But I think those points really stood out to me because some of us are in a season of death to things. I mean, I think like John said, you're always being called to die to certain things. And maybe your ego, maybe you thought you're a humble person, and there's new dynamics at work where all of that's coming into play, and you realize, no, I'm actually really easily offended by this particular person. Or maybe there's something coming up where you're in a season of sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice God's calling you to do in a hidden way, and you're really, that really irks you. Nobody sees how hard you're working. They aren't grateful for what you're doing.
Ooh,
like that's a cross. Maybe it's a season of a dream dying, and maybe it was a good dream, but it wasn't what God has for you in the moment, and that particular dream is dying because you've chosen the way of Jesus. And I could go on and on, but I think some of us are in a season of the cross. And without that hope, I mean, the epistles are full of this. Obviously, I study a lot of 1 Peter. 1 Peter is full of this, that when you are in the midst of suffering, the reason it's bearable is because of resurrection, that one day all of those things will be vindicated. And even right now in this life, I think this, as the psalmist says, we can see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, that Jesus is going to come through with resurrection in our lives right now, because eternity is right now, and also in the future. So I think that was the biggest point that stood out to me, was just like how those link together.
Yeah. But there's a couple things you just said, just like those hidden parts, like, doesn't anyone know what I'm doing? Man, I have complained that.
I don't know. That's a big one for me. I'm like, maybe I should just tell some people all the things I'm doing so that they are like impressed or say something. And it's like, oh, yuck.
I don't like that whole right hand, left hand, don't know what they're doing stuff. Like, because there's like this affirmation that we're looking for, and it's really hard. It's like, I know, Lord, you see me. Yeah. I know that you're with me. But my pride and my desire to be raised up or to looked upon a certain way.
People to be pleased with me. Yeah.
The fear of people is still very prevalent in me. Lord, help my soul. And then that last statement you said, like, eternity is in session. Like, I was thinking about that other day, and I was just like, the eternity is our reality right now.
Yeah.
And meaning that like you and I are eternal right now.
Yeah.
And we should see our lives as we are eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Because that changes the way we actually go after things and we desire things. Because like if it doesn't matter in eternity, does it matter now?
Mm.
Like I was just like, because I heard out of all the people, I heard some business guy say that. It was like an Alex Hormozy statement. He was just saying like, do you know in 2 generations, no one will even remember you? Mm-hmm. He says, what's your grandfather's first name? What was his brother's name? And I was like, I was like, I don't remember. He was grandfather. And in Korea, we don't say people's first names. That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking like, I don't know his first name. Yeah. I don't know his brother's name. Or
you don't know what they did probably. Or,
yeah. I just know what he did and who he was to me and how much I loved him. But like, you're absolutely right. Like if it doesn't matter in like 2 generations, what if we really saw life in like eternity? Mm-hmm. What actually really matters? Not so that I'm not trying to gladiator it so that my life will echo in eternity. People should look
or
at me.
Like workaholic it, where people are like, unless I make a mark on society in a certain, it's like, no, raising your children well can be a mark on society. Yeah. So there's like nuance to that. But
yeah. And I was just like, but it allows me to see like certain things don't matter. Mm-hmm. And it allows me to see if God's kingdom is in session now and it's moving into fruition, and then it's going to move even from there. It's like, how do I live my life in light of eternity being in session, in light of that we are eternal beings? Yeah. And I'm not trying to go there, but like, I'm definitely like, that has been circulating in my head when you said that, and how good it is, how important it is that we do the eternal things. We think on the eternal things now because it's in session. Yeah. It's in session. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. That really hit me. I was just thinking like, I wonder what your thoughts are on the book of Mark too. And you can comment below. But it's a short book. If you haven't read it, just read it. You could read it. Yeah, you could
read it today.
You really could read it today. And just like what I liked about the book of Mark was the ending. It was like, and they were afraid, meaning like they were in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like Mark was writing this, and he might have been like, I don't know what else they're living out like the next part of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear and trembling in the book of Mark. It's kind of a theme throughout. And one thing we didn't get to talk about through the series, which is so good, is the book of Mark's emphasis on how human the disciples are. Yeah. He has a good emphasis on, the human side of Jesus, but also how human and messed up the disciples are. That Mark, more than any other gospel, is always portraying the disciples like crazy, saying stupid things and reacting in fear or reacting in out of a need for power, all these different things, which is really interesting. But throughout, the women are sort of the exemplary disciples. Like they're the ones along the way who are following faithfully, and then you get to resurrection and they're running away in fear. So it's a really interesting theme. We didn't have time to go through it in the book of Mark, but it probably means that the community Mark was writing to, a lot of people think a persecuted community, it might be the earliest gospel written, but still written, at least maybe 30 to 50 years after the life of Jesus. And it's very possible that he's telling them, look, we messed it up too. Like John Mark was probably a young man, maybe the one who ran away naked in the garden. We're not sure. But
he was definitely the guy who got kicked out of the band.
But they had a need to know. Maybe it tells us that the early community of Christ, just like us, needed to know that they messed it up too. Like the only reason any of us can follow Jesus is Jesus. Because Jesus is faithful to show up.
Say that again. Yeah, the only reason that we could follow Jesus is Jesus. Oh my gosh. let that hit. Let that hit, because I'm so a person who's like trying to be competent in all the things.
Yeah.
If you know me, I am like trying to get better at
Everything.
at everything at once. And like what that reminds me is like I can't.
Mm-mm.
I can't follow Jesus without Jesus.
Yeah, we're all gonna mess up.
I can't parent my children without Jesus. I can't do I can't do the church thing. I can't do the job thing. The more we understand, like, and know and learn, the more we understand we don't.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to your eternity comment, well, what does that mean for what is truly worth investing in? It's your intimacy with Jesus. Like, if you accomplish so many things and you never spend a moment with Jesus, like, does it really matter? So what can you do to make sure that you are setting aside that time? What can you do to make sure you are resting in his loving presence? The fact that you cannot do anything for him, that he's done everything for you. What does that look like in your day to make that a part of your life for the rest of eternity?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And thank you again for joining us. And I hope that you just take some time, go through Mark, and just listen and see how Jesus will help you walk with Jesus yoked to your rabbi. God bless you.